So I'm back with another BoomBox setup. I'm going to show you how quickly you can get up and running with it and show you how to set up a sort of a typical explosion shot and apply materials, do some tweaks after the sim, and get it ready to render. I won't be getting into the rendering this time, just for the sake of time. That's just a longer process, but I want to show you how quickly you can get up and going with BoomBox. So in a clean scene, I am going to drop down a geo node. I'm going to call this block because I'm going to be fracturing a concrete block. So I've pre-made this geometry. I'll provide this this file. And let's see what I want to do. I don't want this thing to be flat to camera like that, so let's drop down a transform. And maybe kind of sort of have it like this. I have my camera. I don't have a camera yet, but when I do, I kind of want that to be on the roughly on the z-axis, and I kind of want this to move like that. So next I'm going to drop down the BoomBox HDA. If you don't have this, you can pick this up on Gumroad. There are links in the description. So that takes just a second to calculate the fracture. You see the velocity gizmo there. I'm going to turn that off just while I'm dialing in the fracture settings. So let's look at a fracture by clicking up in the output select. These pieces look kind of cool. But I think I want a few more pieces, so I'm just going to up this to 60. I may even up that a little bit more. So when you change the point count, it obviously refractures your geometry. It takes just a second to do that. I'm going to go down to 50. Like some of those pieces, I want some large pieces. Yeah, okay, we'll say that that is good. So now let's look at our high-res geo and back in our velocity tab. So I know kind of what I want. I just want this to sort of burst outwards towards where our camera is going to be. So using this clip setting, you can change your initial velocity gizmo from a more spherical to a more of a conic sort of a blast. So let's take a look at what we've got. Just hit play. And that. It's okay. It's not quite what I want. Let me turn on real-time playback. It's looking all right. I want to up my angular velocity. I really want these pieces to spin more, so I'm going to just play with that value some. It's definitely looking better. I don't think for this sim I'm going to deal with any constraints, but I might test them out just really quickly. So let's look at our constraints. Go in our constraints tab, turn those on. I'm going to hop into dark mode just so we can see better. And let me see what this looks like with, yeah. So we can get less constraints if we use this velocity radius. If we make that a little bit higher, but you want to be careful of that because that's also transferring velocity onto more pieces, which may not be what I want. So maybe let's look at this velocity threshold, or the velocity threshold on the let's turn that down to 0. I don't really think we gained anything from that. Usually what that will do is it says that if there's velocity present on the constraints, use this threshold to like keep some of them. Maybe it's deleting too many. In my case, it's actually not quite deleting enough. So I think the velocity radius is what we'd have to continue to adjust. So now we got more pieces coming off. I'm not sure that I'm going to keep these constraints, but because I actually want more pieces flying off than that. Let me just AV this with those off. Yeah, I like that a lot better. But let me also just hop into my custom velocity to see if there is anything else I want to maybe change. So make sure you're in points mode. So tap S, go into points mode, grab make sure your main edit handle is active as well. So let me grab that point. I want to move it, not scale it. So let's just make this kind of come up this way, that way, rotate. And I really want some of these to come like at camera pretty hard. So I'm just tapping S to get in and out of the selection mode. And maybe this corner. Sometimes these pieces can be tough to grab because we're in points mode. You have to grab the centroid of the piece, and sometimes that's can be a little bit of a pain. You can also, you can roll your mouse wheel to get more or less of those pieces based on the soft fall off. Let's go up and let me turn the guide off and then hit play. There's parts of that I like, but there are also parts of this that I like. I like how violent that is, but I like sort of the shape of the other one. So I'm going to switch this to blended and then just come in just over half. I feel like I still want more of that impact just because it was pretty hard. All right, now the one thing I want to do is come back to this impact velocity, and I just think that I want to pull it out a little bit more. I feel like it's getting a little bit too many of the pieces in the back are being affected by it. I want some of those to hold on, but I don't know if I want to use constraints or not. So let's see how this is looking. I'm going to drop down a null and plug that into my high res, just so I don't have to see all of the visualizers. I think that's pretty cool, but I really want it to have a sort of a stronger impact. Let me do this. Let me tick this off and do that. So I want it to have a stronger impact and then slow down. So let's animate our time scale. So let's say at frame 3, we're going to have our time scale set to maybe 3. And then we'll set a keyframe, go forward just a few frames, and then we're going to pull this back down to like 0.5. And let's play this and see how it looks. Maybe even, let's look at our curve here. You can look at that curve by either tapping V or shift clicking it. Both will get you to the same place. So I'm going to pull this 3 back a little bit, and let's slow this down faster, and rather than being a value of 0.5, I want this to be even slower, 0.25. Okay. That's getting there. It feels like it slows down a little bit too fast. Now the other thing that I don't want is, I don't want this burst. Let me just get this out of the way. I don't want this to happen at frame 1. I want this to be a little bit later. So let me adjust my start frame to frame 24. And then after doing that, what I'm also going to need to do is, this was on frame 3. So let's move this to frame 27. And there we go. So now let's take a look. And the reason I did that was I just wanted to offset that by the amount of time that I was having the burst. All right. So I think that is working pretty well. I still want some more angular velocity on that. So let's just crank this all the way up to 10. Kind of like that. I feel like the ramp is still a little bit too hard. So let me look again at my curves, and let's just add a little bit of a ease there. I feel like that is kind of cool. Let me also, just for the sake of seeing it, let me turn my constraints on and then see what it looks like with constraints. Not as cool. not by a long shot. All right, so I'm going to say that I mostly really like this. All right, now I'm going to go up one level, and I'm going to drop down a camera by holding Command or Alt and clicking on it, because I want my camera to be sort of at that location where I am. That's not quite right. I want it to be dead center, so maybe I don't want it to be dead center. Hang on. No, you do. Yeah, I want the brick to be centered, but that's not at world 0. So, or actually, I think my Y rotation, it is at world 0. My Y rotation was a little bit weird. So let's just come here. I'm gonna say that's good enough. All right, we can change this a little bit later if need be. Let's hop back in. Now that we've got our camera positioned, I unlocked the camera because I don't want to make any changes and then mess up my camera position. So for the most part, I'm really liking this. Now let's just take a look at our UVs. Let me save what I've got and take a look at our UVs. Now the outer UVs, they held. That's exactly what we fed into it. And the inner UVs, they're there, but they look a little bit wonky. So let me drop down a UV flatten. And I want to, before I even plug this in, I just want to set this to inside, because I know that my pieces have, the inside pieces belong to an inside group. So let me also change the center of this, and let's see. Yeah. So without really any effort here, we've got a little bit better UVs. Now there's still some viewport bug. Let me come back and go back here. Yep. So we've got some here that have this weird seam, and I think I saw another one. These ones have these weird seams. That's going to be really hard to diagnose where that is, or to try to fix it. I don't think it's going to matter, so I'm just going to leave it as it is, but I do think that this is a little bit better than what was there. So that may be something that I try to tidy up in a future version, but for now, if you have UV issues, you can fix it like that. But one of the things we don't really want to do is I don't want to fix this every frame. You can see these are, you know, like that. The UV texture is swimming through there. So how do we fix things? Like what's coming out of here is an animated, you know, it's an animation. So how do we fix that? Well, let's set this to fracture. And in our fracture settings, let's not color the pieces. Now if we look at our UVs, nothing's changing. Now we still have this this little clock icon that says, hey, this geometry stream has animation on it. So let's just put a time shift, not a time blend, a time shift. And we're going to delete these channels and just say frame 1. All right, so now we have just a single frame, no animation happening when these UVs are getting applied. So let's take our exploded view and set that scale down to 0. And now, so we've got cleaned up UVs. We're also going to apply a just a quick material just to get a little bit better looking viewport. Let me just grab let me go to my hip file and then up and texture and this concrete block. So another thing we need to do is this concrete block texture that I just grabbed online is far too big. So let's change that. Let's do a UV transform, and we will scale up our UVs so that as it tiles across the texture appears smaller. All right. Well, we can tweak this as we go, but let's see how this looks. So we have no animation, right? So you might say, all right, well, what are we doing? Instead of outputting the high-res geo, you're outputting the fracture. how do you get your animation back? You just drop down a transform pieces SOP and plug your first input into your pieces, and then take this third put, which is your points only, plug that in to your second input. And now you have, if we go back to our camera 1, you've got your animation with cleaned up UVs and textured. Because what's going to happen, if you're anything like me, you bring in your geometry, put your texture on there, or you bring in your geometry, fracture it up, start playing around, and then you remember, oh, I forgot to put a texture on there at all. So this is how you would apply textures or make changes to your fractured geometry and then apply that to your simulation, all sort of after the fact, after you're happy with your sim. So it's not a bug, it's a feature, but it's not something I've gone through and taken the time to explain yet. So I feel like this is working pretty well. I really like how all this stuff's happening. I like how this piece comes so close to the camera, but it kind of goes past. I would rather it kind of stay in camera and continue to come at us a little bit more. So let's do this. Let's drop a null. And rather than try to, modify this in the sim, let's do this. Let's just grab that point, tap T to get an edit handle, and let's just bring it over. And I know probably anybody who's been around long enough, they're going to say, well, this is really this may not be a good idea. And you may be right. Let's see. This might not work out. But now if we just leave this, it's not going to work, because that piece is going to be, it's going to come out from out of nowhere, right? But if we use a blend shape and feed our main geometry stream into there, and then this edit over here, now what we can do is, as this bursts out, we can keyframe our piece where we want it to go. And we probably need to do that over a little bit longer time. And if it looks goofy, which it very well could, we'll just, yeah, that looks bad. So let's stretch it out a little bit longer. And if it continues to look bad, we just turn it off and keep going. And it looks like that piece has got some gravity that the other ones don't. So I'm going to keep trying to tweak this just a little bit. And if it's not working, we'll disable it. It's still a little bit weird, but it's not terrible. Let's see. And the other thing I want to do is I also want to add a little bit of a rotation to this. Transform. And at the beginning, let's just put a keyframe on our Y rotation, and then we're going to bring this over just a little bit. See how this. And now that's looking maybe still even a little bit awkward. So let's turn that off. See how this works. You know what? I still want to move that piece, but what I want to do is I just want to move it down some so it like comes closer to us like that. And now let's see. Yeah. That rotation isn't quite enough for my taste. So again, let's hit V, look at our animation, and I'll just crank this up a little bit and have it. Maybe this is all just tweaking. The bulk of what we were using the BoomBox for is settled at this point. This is all just making it a little bit better. All right, I feel decently happy with that. The last thing I want to do is I want to add a little bit of color. First on the outside group, and I want to apply this to the vertices, vertex color. And for the outside group, I want this to be maybe a little bit darker. And then the inside group, you can see that retains its brighter color. And the idea being that like the outer parts of the block have been sort of faded or weathered, and the inside is this sort of more fresh color. All right, so there we go. Now we can go on and light this, get it set up for a proper render, but that work I will leave to anyone who wants to do it. My main goal in this was just to show you again how quick and easy it is to use BoomBox just with basic default settings, to show you also how to continue to modify your fractures after the fact, like after you've got your sim going, after you're pretty happy with the motion, then you realize, oh, I need to put colors on here, I need to put textures or modify UVs, anything like that. I wanted to show you how to do that, and then how to get your animation back with this transform pieces SOP. So I hope this was helpful. Look for more of these sort of more focused tutorials, as well as there will be more in-depth just walkthroughs of the settings to show you, almost like a video tutorial series on that's to accompany the help files. So those will all be coming out. Thanks so much to everybody who's picked this up so far. Thanks for the feedback. And if you haven't tried it yet and you want to pick it up, check it out on Gumroad. Follow on Twitter, subscribe here on YouTube, as I'm trying to be more active on YouTube, particularly with these BoomBox videos. And there are more tools that are in the pipeline. I've got a couple more that I'm working on now that will be supplements to the BoomBox that will add more features, but that will build on top of what you get with the BoomBox. So stay tuned for that. Thanks so much for all the support. Really appreciate it.